Before we get started, let me know in the comments, what country are you watching from? I'd love to know where everyone is tuning in from. And if you like the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Story 1, The Man in the Black Honda. It was supposed to be just another early morning shift. At 17, I had started working in a bikini coffee stand, even though my parents didn't like it. The pay was really good, the hours worked well with school, and with college coming up, I needed the money. These drive-through espresso stands in Seattle weren't like normal coffee shops. They were painted in bright colors, and the baristas had to wear bikinis, lingerie, or themed outfits. It was strange at first, but I got used to it. Customers were a mix of regulars, tired workers, and sometimes creepy people, but it was part of the job. My parents didn't approve, but they couldn't pay for college, so I had to. When my boss offered me the busiest morning shift at 4 a.m., I took it. Things felt routine. Get there early, grind coffee, restock, clean, and be ready for Dave in his red sports car by 4:45. But that morning was different. It was my first shift alone. I got there early, 3:30 instead of 4, to have extra time to settle in. The parking lot was dark and empty, with only one working street lamp and another flickering in the distance. The light above the stand had been burned out for days. I unlocked the small building, punched in my code, and turned on music for company. I started filling the sink and running the espresso grinder. Everything was quiet except for those sounds, until I heard a faint tapping on the sliding glass window. I froze, wondering if I imagined it, but the tapping came again, louder. My chest tightened. It was 4:15. We didn't open for another 15 minutes, and the lights were still off, so no one should be there. My heart was racing as I walked toward the window, telling myself it was probably Dave. I turned on the floodlights and saw him, a man standing very close, forehead against the glass, hands cupped to see inside. I jumped back. "We're not open yet," I said, trying to sound calm. 15 more minutes." He didn't answer at first, just stared. Then he smiled slightly and said, "Oh, I can wait." He went back to a small black Honda and sat there. The stand suddenly felt colder. I tried to keep busy, but kept glancing at his car. At 4:30, I turned on the open sign, and the Honda pulled up. The man wore a red cap, a thermal shirt, and pajama pants. Something about him felt off, too casual, too confident. "What can I get you?" I asked. His eyes slowly moved down my body. "What I want," he said, "isn't on the menu." I tried to laugh it off, suggesting a mocha, but he didn't laugh. His face hardened. "I want you to come to my house dressed as a maid. Nothing underneath. And if you don't clean right, I'll punish you." My instincts screamed to run. "I'm not a nice guy," he added, gripping the wheel tighter. Then he smiled, slow and menacing. I shut the window and ran to the back, hands shaking as I tried calling my boss. No answer. I called again and again. When I finally peeked outside, the Honda was gone, replaced by Dave's red car. I'd never been so relieved to see him. I told him what happened, but he laughed it off, saying the guy was just weird. Then he looked at my tip jar and froze. "You just opened, but it's already full," he said. He pulled out a white envelope stuffed with cash. I felt sick. "It's from that guy," I whispered. Dave put on gloves and opened it. Inside was a thick stack of $20 bills and a handwritten note full of spelling mistakes. It read like a contract, explaining in disturbing detail what he wanted to do to me, how he'd tie me up, punish me, and said, "You can scream, but no one will hear you." It ended with, "This is your first payment. By reading this note and accepting the money, you agree." It was clear he thought my refusal would lead to worse punishment. I quickly got dressed and called the police. My boss finally answered and told me to meet them at the station. I gave the money and note to a female officer, but she didn't seem to understand how serious it was, telling me to just quit my job. But I had worked there for years without this happening. My boss checked the security footage. It showed the man arriving long before opening, standing outside for almost an hour, pressing his face to the glass, pacing, and at one point touching himself. His license plate was covered with paper. The police said it was serious and sent an undercover officer to watch the stand the next day. If he came back, I was to flick the open sign on and off. He didn't show that day, but it wasn't over. He came back again and again. He left gifts at work and home. Sometimes notes, sometimes things too disturbing to describe. He called himself Turner. My coworkers noticed. One admitted he had offered her money for my personal information. She was later arrested for prostitution. The police still did little. One night, someone left a joint in my tip jar. It wasn't unusual, so I smoked it before bed. Within minutes, I was hallucinating, seeing fire, demons, screaming ghosts. I ended up in the hospital. It had been laced with PCP. Days later, Turner texted me, bragging and saying we should smoke together. It was from a burner phone. I gave it to police. Again, nothing. He showed up naked in the drive-thru, sometimes in women's underwear. Once he cornered me in the freezer. Every time I called police, every time they failed. Eventually I left. I changed my name, moved, and erased my work history. Bikini baristas were getting bad press, and work was hard to find. I wanted a clean start, but I couldn't shake the fear. I double-checked locks, carried pepper spray, watched every strange car. It became my life. I felt like I was living in a field of rattlesnakes, always hearing the rattling. Years later, I heard about a man matching Turner's description being arrested for attacking another barista in the Pacific Northwest. Same kind of notes, stalking, nudity. They never released his name. I hope it was him, locked away so he can't hurt anyone else. I still don't sleep well. Sometimes I think I see headlights in my driveway. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel safe. But I survived, and that has to be enough for now. Story 2. The Behavioral Health Sitter. Hospitals at night are quiet, but not in a peaceful way. There's the buzz of fluorescent lights, the beeping of machines, and a sense that something bad has happened somewhere. I worked as a CNA in Missouri, taking vitals, writing things down, helping patients with whatever they needed. The job was simple until you had to be a sitter. Sitters stay with patients who are high risk, on suicide watch, violent, or just unstable. One night, I was sent to the behavioral health unit. It was far from town near the Kansas border, after being moved when a tornado destroyed the old one. It felt like it was in the middle of nowhere. No city lights, just stars and the occasional coyote. It looked like a horror movie, especially on night shifts. The day tech told me my patient was super polite and had held the door open for her. She said he'd gotten in a fight but nothing bad, so I thought the night would be easy. Still, the psych ward made me uneasy. I usually work cardiac, but that night I was in the men's ward, watching a calm man. He greeted me politely, called me ma'am, and asked about my tattoos. He showed me his bear tattoo, smiling. He seemed fine. At 9 p.m., he went to bed without trouble. I sat in the corner, near an outlet to charge my Kindle, not realizing I had put myself far from the door. My alarm button was clipped to my scrubs, but at some point it must have fallen off. Around 1 a.m., he sat up and stared at me. I smiled and told him the time, saying he still had hours to sleep. He nodded but kept staring. Then he asked to call his parents, saying he needed to tell them something. I told him he could call in the morning. It was policy. He agreed quietly, but something about his eyes made me uneasy. At 3 a.m., I took my break with the nurse on his case. She looked at me and said, "I can't believe you're in there with him." I asked what she meant. She said, "No one told you?" He was brought in after months of threatening to kill his parents. Started with calls, then brought a gun to dinner. They found mutilated animals at their door. When they searched his trailer, the walls were covered in blood and feces. Dozens of gutted animals just lying around. My stomach turned. I realized the quiet man I'd been sitting with all night had come from a nightmare scene. His stillness wasn't kindness. It was planning. When I went back, my hands were shaking. He was still sitting up, staring at me. I sat back in the corner, heart pounding. I thought about my alarm lying near his bed, out of reach without passing close to him. I was trapped. No phone, no escape. I counted seconds under my breath just to stay calm. As dawn came, he finally lay down again. I didn't move, afraid to even breathe. When the day shift came, I was still frozen in my chair. I stood up slowly and stepped into the hallway. My knees felt weak, my head was light, but I kept my face calm. I didn't want him to see that I was scared. I didn't want him to know that he had gotten to me. As I walked back to the nurse's station, the nurse from earlier gave me a sad smile. "You made it," she said. I nodded. Barely. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had almost happened. That night had been like flipping a coin, and I hadn't even realized I was playing. I learned that politeness can be a mask, that monsters sometimes speak softly, and that danger isn't always obvious when it's sitting right in front of you. I found out later that they moved him to another place, somewhere more secure, with more experienced staff. But I couldn't forget the image of him sitting there in bed, eyes wide and unblinking, lips barely open. I realized how easily things could have gone differently. If he had decided to attack, no one would have reached me in time. If I had startled him, moved too quickly, or tried to challenge him, it could have ended in blood. I've had patients bite me, kick me, or grab me, but none of them scared me like he did, because he didn't have to touch me to terrify me. All he had to do was sit there, silent, staring, and smiling when no one else was around. That kind of fear doesn't go away. It settles into your nerves and shows up in nightmares, crowded rooms, and late-night shadows. From that day on, I never took another sitter job without reading the full report first. I made sure my alarm was clipped tightly to me, my phone charged and ready, and I always sat closer to the door so I wouldn't be trapped. It wasn't just about following rules anymore. It was about staying alive. It's easy to forget that some people are broken in ways you can't see. Being polite doesn't mean they're safe. Danger doesn't always yell. Sometimes it whispers. And when you hear that whisper in a quiet hospital room, you learn to pay attention. You learn to trust your gut. That night taught me a lesson I will never forget. The hospital never said sorry. The nurse who had told me about him just laughed it off, saying I had handled it better than most. But I wasn't looking for praise. I wanted peace, and I never found it in that job again. I stayed a little longer, but eventually moved to a different hospital in a different department, somewhere with windows, sunlight, and people nearby. I still think about him sometimes. I wonder if he's still locked up, or if he's out somewhere, smiling, holding doors open, and calling nurses ma'am. And I wonder if those nurses will see through it in time. I hope they do, because danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it's already in the room, sitting in silence, waiting for you to blink. Story 3, Jack with a Shotgun. It was supposed to be a simple blind date. Nothing serious, just something a coworker set up because she thought I needed to meet someone new. I was 23, living on the West Coast, trying to juggle college and part-time work and not thinking much about dating. Valentine's Day was coming up, and I didn't have plans. That's when my coworker introduced me to Jack. She said he was nice, single, and looking for someone kind. We talked on the phone a few times, then met in person. He brought me flowers and candy and seemed charming at first. Tall, well-spoken, handsome, with a bright smile. But then he said, "You're my girl now," the very first time we met. It was strange, but I brushed it off. He was polite, attentive, and said all the right things. At first, it felt harmless. I thought he was just overly sweet. I didn't realize how wrong I was. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Jack became quiet in public, avoided my friends and family, and kept trying to keep me to himself. He always wanted to know where I was, questioned me when I was busy, and insisted on being included in everything. He didn't yell or hit me, but the control was closing in like a rope around my neck. It was so slow and subtle that it almost felt normal. Then he told me he loved me, even though we barely knew each other. I laughed, but he didn't. A week later, he got down on one knee and proposed. No ring, just the words. He said we could marry now and buy a ring later. I told him we needed more time. He smiled quietly, and I thought we understood each other. But a week later, he proposed again. Still no ring, still the pressure. I started to see how fast he wanted me in his world and how little he cared about mine. I told him I needed a break. He didn't fight, just smiled like nothing was wrong. I thought that would be the end. Then a few days later, I came home to find him sitting on the stairs outside my apartment. He said he was just waiting for me. I told him to go home, and he left without arguing, but he kept coming back. He started showing up outside my place randomly. If I didn't answer, he'd knock for half an hour, leave, and come back later. I hid at my neighbor's place to avoid him. The calls never stopped, but I ignored them. Eventually, he disappeared for months, and I thought it was over. Then I got a call from an unknown number. It was Jack. He wanted to see me again, saying his mother wanted to meet me. I lost my temper. I told him to never call me again, to lose my number, to stay away. He didn't listen. He showed up again, knocking. I had someone else answer and tell him I wasn't home. He would just nod, smile, and leave. But the third time, he crossed the line. My best friend told him I wasn't home, and he asked if he could come in and wait. She said no. He tried to push his way in. She yelled for me, and we managed to shut the door. My heart was pounding. I told him I would call the police if he didn't leave. He muttered something and walked away. I didn't call the police that night, a mistake I regret. 5 or 6 months later, it was a quiet Saturday. My younger sisters, 14 and 17, were visiting. I had a migraine and stayed in bed with my door open so I could hear them. They were watching a movie, laughing about Tom Cruise. Outside, I heard kids playing. Everything felt normal. I took more aspirin and dozed off, until a loud bang woke me. I thought it was a ball hitting the wall. Then another bang, followed by my sister yelling, "What the hell was that?" I sat up, confused, then heard a man's voice shouting, "Get the—" before screaming started. My blood ran cold. I didn't know how many people were there, or if they were armed. I closed my door, pushed a dresser against it, sat on the floor, and called 911. I told the operator that someone had broken in and was threatening my sisters. While I was on the phone, I heard the man shouting, "Where's your sister? She doesn't know what I had to do for her. I love her." Then I heard, "She's in the room." My heart stopped. They had told him where I was. Footsteps came toward my door, followed by a violent slam. The whole door shook. He yelled, "Open the door or I'll kill everyone." I was crying, begging the operator to hurry. She said officers were on the way. Time felt endless. Then it went quiet. My sister knocked softly and told me it was okay to come out. He had left. The police came soon after. The living room was a mess, furniture overturned, paper scattered, fear hanging in the air. My sisters were pale and shaking. I asked who it was. They said it was Jack. He had kicked in my door in broad daylight with a sawed-off shotgun and threatened to kill my family. A week later, the police caught him. They told me he had been involved in another incident just a few weeks before. He had been shooting a shotgun into the air. When the police stopped him, he said someone had broken into his place, stolen his weed, and even cut off the tip of his tongue. The officers didn't arrest him then. They just gave him a ticket, but now they had what they needed. I helped by giving them the address of one of his relatives from the phone book. They caught him while he was on the way to that house and arrested him. He confessed right away, but later pleaded not guilty. In the end, he took a plea deal and served 5 years in prison. I moved to another state, trying to forget all of it. But the scariest thing I learned years later was that after he got out, he moved into a halfway house right across the street from my old apartment, the same one he had broken into. It felt like fate had put him right back where it all began. 11 years have gone by, and I still lock my doors twice. I change my phone number every year. I keep pepper spray by my bed and a chair pushed under the doorknob. I've never felt completely safe again. Some things leave marks that never fade. Some moments change how you live forever. I never thought a blind date could turn into a nightmare. I never thought a smile could turn into a scream. Yet here I am, still alive, tougher than before, more careful, more watchful, and always listening for that sound at the door. It began online, the way so many stories do now. A friend request, a few laughs, shared interests, and easy conversation. His name was Danny, and I met him on Facebook in 2011. We had mutual friends, people I trusted, so I let my guard down. I was 18, a little naive, wanting to meet people, and he seemed harmless at first. He shared music, made strange jokes, and seemed smart in a quirky way. We never met in person, only talked online. He never asked if I had a boyfriend, but I figured he knew. My profile made it clear, pictures, posts, everything. But I soon learned that what you assume won't protect you. One October day, he told me he liked me and sent a poem comparing me to a tapestry. Beautiful, delicate, detailed. I didn't know what to say, so I joked, "Wow, I wish my boyfriend said things like that." That's when things shifted. He didn't get sad. He got angry. He accused me of leading him on, playing with his feelings, being cruel. I was confused. We'd only been talking for a month, and we had never met. I decided to give him space. A few days later, he messaged again, apologizing. Things seemed to go back to normal. He was funny again, kind, easy to talk to. I thought the bad moment had passed. Then he added me on Skype. I told him I didn't like using video calls with anyone, but he kept asking. Soon his requests turned sexual. He wanted me to video chat naked. I told him no, over and over, until I finally blocked him. That didn't stop him. I got dozens of angry and threatening messages. He told me I was a bad friend. Then he said he was a hacker and that his friends were hackers too. He claimed he could ruin my grades, make me fail, and destroy my life. I didn't believe all of it, but I believed he would try. Sometimes he'd be nice again, then switch and threaten me. He said he could ruin my relationship. I started to panic. I asked our mutual friends about him, and what they told me made my blood run cold. He was violent, dangerous, twisted. He lived just minutes from my college in Reading, Pennsylvania. Every time I walked across campus, I was afraid I'd see him. I changed my Skype, blocked him on every site, but he just made new accounts. One of them sent messages like, "You've been warned. Your grades are passing, not for long." Each one made my stomach drop. I didn't know if it was him or someone else he knew. Against my better judgment, I unblocked him. He messaged me calmer this time. My boyfriend knew everything by then and told me to go to the police if it got worse. But I wasn't sure they could help. Danny hadn't hurt me physically or shown up yet. I began saving everything. Screenshots, messages, profiles, just in case. For weeks, he switched between sweet and cruel. After Christmas, I blocked him again. A few weeks later, another account sent me a message I'll never forget. "After careful consideration, you're being let go. You should thank the one you've wronged. It's only because of his kindness you're being forgiven so easily." I blocked that account and waited. Days passed, then weeks. And then, out of nowhere, I saw the headline. Danny had been arrested with several others. The charges were horrifying: possession and distribution of child pornography. He'd been under investigation for a long time. He was facing up to 60 years. Relief and sickness hit me at the same time. I had been talking to someone dangerous, someone capable of terrible things. Even now, I wonder what would have happened if I had given in, if I'd turned on that camera, if I'd tried to keep the peace. Maybe I'd have ended up as one of his victims, but I didn't. I stayed strong, and justice caught him. He's still in prison, and even if he gets out early, he'll be monitored for life. That helps me sleep a little easier, but it doesn't erase the fear he left behind. I still avoid unknown friend requests. I check every message carefully. I hesitate before trusting anyone new. He taught me how dangerous the internet can be, how predators can hide behind kindness, and how red flags aren't always obvious. I never thought an online friendship could leave scars, but it did. I survived a stalker without ever seeing his face, and that somehow makes it even more frightening. There are moments that split life into before and after. For me, one of those moments began with something as simple as a sleepover. I was 20 in university and still living with my parents. I was thankful to my parents for keeping me safe and loving me, but they often treated me like I was still a little kid, and it could feel suffocating. So when I met Myra, bright, lively, captivating Myra, in junior English, it was like breathing fresh air. We clicked right away. She had just moved from Chicago and had this magnetic, almost intense energy. She was beautiful, smart, and full of charm. I always thought she looked better than me, but she disagreed, often staring at me with an admiration that felt stronger than normal friendship. We got close quickly and found out we shared some unusual habits, like a secret love for Barbie dolls, something both of us had held on to since childhood. For her, it was about the design and the craftsmanship. For me, it was about nostalgia, holding on to a piece of innocence. So when she invited me over for a sleepover and told me to bring my favorite dolls, I felt touched, not suspicious. It felt like two kids enjoying something the world told us to outgrow. My mom was, as always, cautious, but I reassured her. Myra had promised to meet her soon, and it was just one night. Saturday came, and Myra pulled up in a blue Sentra, smiling warmly. She offered me a shot of vodka, Grey Goose, and I laughed and took it. One became four. I hadn't eaten, and I was a lightweight. I remember giggling in the passenger seat, the world already spinning. We reached her place, an old house at the edge of town, worn on the outside but neat inside. "It's cheap," she joked. "I'm broke." Inside, everything was spotless, almost obsessively arranged. Books, framed photos, furniture perfectly aligned. She gave me bread and water to help me sober up, then turned on friends. I barely made it to the lime green couch before passing out. When I woke up, nothing made sense. I wasn't on the couch. I was lying on a dusty basement floor with a thin pillow under my head and a scratchy wool blanket over me. A single flickering bulb cast long shadows on the concrete walls. My bag of clothes was there, but my dolls were gone. My phone lay beside a sticky red puddle, dead. I hadn't brought a charger because I didn't plan to stay long. My head throbbed with a pounding migraine, and I felt fabric wrapped around it. The pain beneath it was sharp. "Myra?" I whispered. Silence. My voice cracked from dryness. Slowly, weakly, I crawled toward the boiler's shiny surface in the corner. My reflection shocked me. Sunken eyes, filthy skin smeared with dirt and dried blood. The bandage in my head was soaked. My hair was matted, or maybe missing, I couldn't tell. I staggered up the stairs and pushed open the basement door. The house was silent. All of Myra's belongings, books, photos, the couch, were gone. The building remained, but every trace of her was erased. She hadn't taken my wallet. This wasn't about money. I stepped outside, blinded by the afternoon sun. The street was dirt, surrounded by trees with no familiar landmarks. I started walking. A silver pickup appeared, dust trailing behind it. I waved desperately. The driver stopped. An older couple looked at me with worry. "Are you okay?" the man asked. "I don't know," I said, shaking. "I just want to go home." The woman's voice was soft as she offered to take me to the hospital. I refused. I wanted my mom. The truck moved forward, and the woman climbed into the back with me. "Where to?" the man asked. "Sheridan, Pittsburgh," I said. The woman's hands trembled as she looked at the cloth on my head. "I was a nurse for 30 years, she said gently. "Let me check." I nodded. When she peeled the fabric away, I screamed. The pain was unbearable. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Panic rose in me. "What is it?" I whispered. She pointed toward the mirror. My scalp was torn, streaked with raw red and pink. My hair was gone. My skin crawled with tiny maggots. My ears gone, just empty space. Shaking, I pulled the cloth back farther. Blood poured down my face. The woman screamed. The driver swerved and pulled over. "Myra," I gasped. "She took my hair." My voice was barely there. "She took everything," I whispered. "She drugged me, kept me, cut me." The truck turned toward the hospital. I let it. There was nothing else to do. I didn't know how long I'd been gone. I asked the woman the date. "October 15th, she said softly. My chest tightened. I'd been with Myra since September 28th. I had lost almost 2 weeks. No calls, no search, nothing. Tears streamed down my face. The nurse kept whispering comfort, but I couldn't hear her. My ears were gone, and something inside me felt shattered. At the hospital, they told me I'd been unconscious for days. My scalp had been partly removed, surgically. The work was precise, like someone who knew what they were doing. No infection, no sexual assault. It was careful, controlled, intentional. My dolls were never found. Myra had disappeared completely, likely not even her real name. No records, no fingerprints, no witnesses. I had been treated like one of my dolls, and when she was done, she left me broken and forgotten. It still haunts me how someone so kind and warm could turn into something so terrifying. I don't tell many people the story anymore, but the ones I do always ask the same thing. Why? I don't know. Maybe she was fascinated by the human body. Maybe she saw me as art. Maybe she was just insane. All I know is I survived something I still don't fully understand. Sometimes when I see someone with a perfect face or watch a child play with dolls, I wonder how many more people like her are out there, quiet collectors waiting for someone naive, someone lonely, someone like me. I was thankful to my parents for loving me and keeping me safe, but they still treated me like I was a little girl, and sometimes it felt suffocating. That's why, when I met Myra, bright, lively, and exciting, in junior English, it felt like I could finally breathe. We got along right away. She had just moved from Chicago and had this magnetic energy that drew people in. She was beautiful, smart, and full of charm. I always thought she was prettier than me, but she didn't agree, often looking at me with a kind of admiration that felt stronger than friendship. We became close fast and found we both had a strange little secret. We still love Barbie dolls. She liked them for their design and detail, while I loved them for the memories and innocence they reminded me of. When she invited me over for a sleepover and told me to bring my favorite dolls, I felt touched, not suspicious. It felt like two kids holding on to something the world told us to give up. My mom was careful as always, but I convinced her. Myra had promised to meet her soon, and it was only one night. On Saturday, Myra pulled up in a blue Sentra, smiling warmly. She offered me a shot of Grey Goose vodka. I laughed and took it. One turned into four. I hadn't eaten, and I was a lightweight, so I was giggling in the passenger seat with the world already spinning. We got to her place, an old house on the edge of town. It looked worn outside, but neat inside. "It's cheap," she joked. "I'm broke." Everything inside was spotless, almost obsessively arranged. Books, framed pictures, and furniture all perfectly placed. She gave me bread and water to help me sober up, then put on Friends. I made it to the lime green couch before everything went black. When I opened my eyes, nothing made sense. I wasn't on the couch. I was lying on a dusty basement floor with a thin pillow under my head and a rough wool blanket over me. A single bulb above flickered, throwing long shadows over the concrete walls. My bag of clothes was nearby, but my dolls were gone. My phone was next to a sticky red puddle, dead. I didn't bring a charger because I hadn't planned to stay long. My head throbbed with a splitting migraine, and there was cloth wrapped around it. The pain underneath was sharp. "Myra," I whispered. Silence. My voice cracked. Slowly, I crawled toward the shiny surface of the boiler in the corner. My reflection made me gasp. Sunken eyes, dirty skin streaked with dried blood. The bandage on my head was soaked. My hair was tangled, or missing, I couldn't tell. I stumbled up the stairs and opened the basement door. The house was empty. All Myra's things, books, photos, furniture, were gone. The building was the same, but all signs of her were erased. She hadn't taken my wallet. This wasn't about money. I stepped outside and was blinded by the sun. The street was dirt, with nothing but trees and far-off buildings. I started walking. A silver pickup came down the road, dust behind it. I waved desperately. The driver stopped. An older couple stared at me with concern. "Are you okay?" the man asked. "I don't know," I said, shaking. "I just want to go home." The woman's gentle voice offered to take me to the hospital. I said no. I wanted my mom. As the truck drove, the woman climbed into the back with me. "Where to?" the man asked. "Sheridan, Pittsburgh," I replied. Her hands shook as she looked at the cloth on my head. "I was a nurse for 30 years, she said softly. "Let me look." I nodded. She slowly peeled the fabric away, and I screamed. The pain was unbearable. She gasped, covering her mouth. Panic rose in me. "What is it?" I whispered. She pointed toward the rear view mirror. My scalp was torn, raw red and pink showing. My hair was gone. My skin was crawling with tiny maggots. My ears gone, just empty spaces. My hands shook as I pulled the cloth farther back. Blood ran down my face. The woman screamed. The driver swerved and stopped. "Myra!" I gasped. "She took my hair." My voice was barely there. "She took everything," I whispered. "She drugged me, kept me, cut me." The truck turned toward the hospital. I didn't fight it. There was nothing else to do. I didn't know how long I'd been missing. I asked the woman the date. "October 15th, she said gently. My chest tightened. I'd been with Myra since September 28th. Almost 2 weeks. Gone. No calls, no search, nothing. Tears streamed down my face. The nurse kept whispering comfort, but I couldn't hear her. My ears were gone, and something in me felt broken. At the hospital, they told me I'd been unconscious for days. My scalp had been partly removed, surgically. It was precise, like someone who knew what they were doing. No infection, no sexual assault. It was careful, deliberate. My dolls were never found. Myra had vanished, likely not her real name. No records, no fingerprints, no witnesses. I had been treated like a doll, and when she was done, she left me broken and forgotten. It still haunts me that someone so kind and warm could turn into something so frightening. I don't tell many people anymore, but the ones I do always ask, why? I don't know. Maybe she loved studying the human body. Maybe she thought I was art. Maybe she was just insane. All I know is I survived something I still can't understand. And sometimes when I see a perfect face or a child playing with dolls, I wonder how many more are like her. Silent collectors waiting for someone naive, someone lonely, someone like me. Last spring, I got a Friday night babysitting job for the Davids, a family who lived 5 streets from my house in Chandler, Arizona. I was 17, saving money for community college, and $20 an hour sounded perfect. Their neighborhood seemed safe, single-story houses, neat lawns, and street lights every 30 yards. My parents agreed. I got there at 6:30 p.m. Mrs. David showed me the alarm system, Wi-Fi password, and emergency numbers. She dressed 4-year-old Siebel and 6-year-old Tyler in pajamas and left chicken nuggets in the fridge. Mr. David reminded me bedtime was 8:30 sharp. They left for a charity dinner downtown. When the door shut, I locked it out of habit. The evening started calmly. We colored, watched part of a Paw Patrol episode, then brushed teeth. At 8:25, I took the kids upstairs, read a short puppy story, and turned on their soft blue moon nightlight. They were asleep fast. Downstairs, I texted my mom, spread my biology flashcards on the kitchen island, and poured a cold drink. At 9:15, the doorbell rang. I jumped. The Davids hadn't said anyone might come. Through the peephole, I saw a man in his late 30s, gray hoodie, dark jeans, running shoes. He held keys and waved at the door camera. A black Honda idled at the curb. Speaking calmly, he said, "I'm the kid's uncle, Brandon. Forgot my keys. Need to grab something from upstairs." His voice was normal, but my gut told me something was wrong. The Davids never mentioned a brother. I said through the door, "The parents didn't tell me anyone was coming." He replied, "That's on me." I told my sister I had the spare. "Look, Sybil wanted her purple blanket, right? And Tyler had mac and cheese before his dinosaur PJs. I know their routine." He was right. My stomach nodded. Maybe he was family, maybe not. I checked the baby monitor. Both kids asleep. On the living room camera, he stood still, not touching the door. I called Mrs. David, no answer. Mr. David's phone went to voicemail. I thought about calling 911, but hesitated. Arizona fines for false alarms. Then Mrs. David texted, "Everything okay?" I typed fast, "Man here says he's Brandon. Your brother needs," and 3 dots appeared. Then her reply, "We don't have a brother. Call police now." My hands shook as I called 911, giving the address and his description, stressing that two children were upstairs. From the hallway came a soft knock. He said, "I really need that blanket. 2 minutes." I stayed quiet. He waited, then moved to the windows, trying to look inside. I turned off the lights so he couldn't see me. On my phone screen, I watched him head toward the side gate. A moment later, the backyard light flicked on, then off. The dispatcher said officers were 3 minutes away. I checked the patio door. Still locked, curtain closed. The house felt too still. Then sirens. Then silence. Red and blue lights flashed through the blinds. An officer called from the porch with his badge number, and I opened the door. They searched, but the Honda was gone. Tire marks leading to the main road. No neighbor cameras caught him. Inside, the kids slept. The officers praised my caution. Mr. and Mrs. David rushed home pale-faced. Mrs. David hugged me hard, saying, "Thank you for protecting them." By 12:30 a.m., the patrol cars left. The parents drove me home. I kept looking over my shoulder. That night, I wondered how he knew the kids' dinner and bedtime. Maybe he'd been watching earlier. The Davids later found a small gap in a window lock, maybe where he listened. He vanished before police came, maybe using a scanner or just instinct. I avoided babysitting for weeks. When I started again, I put privacy film on windows, fixed latches, and kept a bat nearby. I stopped believing a calm voice and personal details meant trust. Detectives later said similar men were seen near schools, collecting bits of talk to sound believable. They thought he tried 3 houses that month, always claiming family ties. Knowing that didn't help. It only proved how practiced he was. The case is still open. I babysit only for relatives now and never ignore gut feelings. Safety is in small choices: locking a gate, staying silent, double-checking a story. That night, I made those choices, and 2 children kept dreaming under a blue moon nightlight instead of waking to a stranger's steps. Sometimes after midnight, I wake to the memory of a soft knock and a voice asking for a blanket. It sounds patient, almost friendly, waiting for someone to trust him. I hope no one ever does. I'm not one for ghost stories or wild imagination, but what happened to me last month still keeps me up at night. My name's Leah. I'm 32 and work as a nurse in a small upstate New York hospital. My shifts often end late, and I drive home on quiet roads past woods and farms. Usually it's peaceful, just me, my old Honda, and the radio. But one night everything changed. It was 11:30 p.m. I was drained after a 12-hour shift. Route 12 was my usual way home, a 2-lane road lined with trees and an occasional gas station. About 5 miles from home, orange construction signs blocked the road. A big arrow pointed left to a road I'd never taken. The sign read, "Detour, road work ahead." I groaned but turned. The narrow, unlit road was creepy from the start. Trees close on both sides. No lights, no houses. My headlights only lit a small patch ahead. I turned off the radio, gripping the wheel. The road twisted endlessly. I expected to see workers or machines, but saw nothing. Just trees and the hum of my engine. 10 minutes in, unease crept in. No other cars. My GPS kept losing signal and rerouting. "This doesn't feel right," I muttered. In the mirror, a truck appeared about 100 yards back, moving slowly, headlights off. My stomach dropped. Who drives without lights at night? I told myself maybe they were local, but the truck stayed the same distance, matching my speed. I sped up. So did it. My heart pounded. Then I realized the detour signs were gone. I hadn't seen road work on Route 12 either. Panic set in. I grabbed my phone. No service. The truck kept following. A dark shape, maybe black or dark blue. Driver hidden. I told myself to just find the main road, but the curves never ended. Then I saw a faint glow ahead, another car's headlights. Relief washed over me. I slowed, flashing my high beams. A white SUV slowed too, pulling over. I stopped, engine running, and cracked my window. "Hey, I think someone's following me," I called. The driver, a man with glasses, asked if I was okay. I pointed behind me. "There's a truck, no lights, been behind me for miles." He looked and then said, "There's no truck." I whipped around. Empty road. My blood froze. "This road's strange," he said. "I got detoured too, but there's no construction on 12. Follow me back." I did, eyes glued to the mirrors. No truck. 10 minutes later, we were back on Route 12. No signs, no cones, like nothing was ever there. I thanked him, and he said he'd call the cops. At home, I locked up and couldn't sleep. The next day, the sheriff said no road work was planned. Online, I found people talking about fake detours, strange cars, roads that led nowhere. Some said it was a prank, others hinted at worse. I don't know what I saw. Maybe I was tired, maybe not. But something was wrong with that road. I take a different way home now, even if longer. And every time I see a construction sign, my heart jumps. I don't think I'll ever feel safe driving alone at night again. When I was 15, I met my now husband, who had just turned 16, in art class. Our small town didn't have much for two teens to do, except maybe a trip to Target. The charm here was in the old mining history and the river running through the canyon. I'd grown up on its trails. One short half-mile hike led to a small bridge with a peaceful view. Nearby was another bridge, one of the tallest in the world, beautiful but with a tragic history of suicides. One evening around 6 p.m., we walked to the smaller bridge. The canyon walls blocked the sun early, and darkness came fast. The air felt heavier than usual. By the time we reached the turn toward the bridge, it was pitch black. We used our phone flashlights, but they only lit a small circle. I felt uneasy, but my husband wanted to keep going. As we neared the bridge, I froze. A tall figure stood 3 feet off the trail. My light hit his back. He was huge, 6 or 7 feet tall, bulky, 200 to 250 pounds, in a brown flannel shirt and dark pants. His hair stuck straight up, and his arms were oddly long. His head was round, almost perfectly so. I couldn't see his feet. He stood still, facing the darkness. I whispered, "What is that?" My husband stared, frozen. For a minute, none of us moved. My mind raced. How did he get here? No other cars were parked. My husband called out, "Hey man, what are you doing?" The figure turned slowly. A wave of nausea hit me. I grabbed my husband's arm and ran. I didn't look back. He called my name, running behind me. We reached the car, alone in the lot, and drove the 5 miles back to town without cell service. Days later, we returned in daylight with friends. Nothing was there. Not a pole, rock, or clothing. But the spot dropped 4 feet, meaning he wasn't 6 or 7 feet. He was closer to 8 or 10. This town is full of stories, some lovely, some tragic. I don't know what we saw, but it's part of the river's mystery now, one I'll never solve. I kept this to myself for a long time. Last year it felt safer to stay quiet, but silence doesn't help anyone. I'm a security guard at a small airport in Germany. Most flights leave before dawn, so I work nights. For 5 years it was routine. Check doors, scan badges, watch cameras. In mid-July, the terminal was busy, but something felt off. At midnight, I took a break, bought a chocolate bar and energy drink, and sat at a metal table watching a video. I felt like turning around and saw a man in a black rain jacket staring straight at me, hood down, eyes locked. I looked away, finished my drink, and went to the restroom. When I came back, he was 50 meters away, still watching. As soon as I saw him, he slipped into a side hall. My shift went on. At dawn, my phone died. On the short walk home, I plugged it into a power bank. 10 minutes from home, I checked the charge and saw a message. Unknown AirTag detected. Moving with you. Distance, 800 meters. I didn't own an AirTag. The street was empty. The numbers dropped. 600, 500, 400. I jogged. 200. I turned the corner, ran to my building, slammed the door. 50 meters, 20, 10. I looked through the peephole. Empty street. I dumped my pockets and bag. Nothing. I didn't call the police. I told myself I was tired. I changed, lay down, and put on a horror video. I fell asleep. Sometime later, I woke in the dark. On my phone screen, another message. Unknown AirTag detected. Moving with you. Distance, 2 meters. 2 meters meant inside my room. I couldn't move. I was drained after a 12-hour shift. Route 12 was my usual way home, a 2-lane road lined with trees and an occasional gas station. About 5 miles from home, orange construction signs blocked the road. A big arrow pointed left to a road I'd never taken. The sign read, "Detour, road work ahead." I groaned but turned. The narrow, unlit road was creepy from the start. Trees close on both sides. No lights, no houses. My headlights only lit a small patch ahead. I turned off the radio, gripping the wheel. The road twisted endlessly. I expected to see workers or machines, but saw nothing. Just trees and the hum of my engine. 10 minutes in, unease crept in. No other cars. My GPS kept losing signal and rerouting. "This doesn't feel right," I muttered. In the mirror, a truck appeared about 100 yards back, moving slowly, headlights off. My stomach dropped. Who drives without lights at night? I told myself maybe they were local, but the truck stayed the same distance, matching my speed. I sped up. So did it. My heart pounded. Then I realized the detour signs were gone. I hadn't seen road work on Route 12 either. Panic set in. I grabbed my phone. No service. The truck kept following. A dark shape, maybe black or dark blue. Driver hidden. I told myself to just find the main road, but the curves never ended. Then I saw a faint glow ahead, another car's headlights. Relief washed over me. I slowed, flashing my high beams. A white SUV slowed too, pulling over. I stopped, engine running, and cracked my window. "Hey, I think someone's following me," I called. The driver, a man with glasses, asked if I was okay. I pointed behind me. "There's a truck, no lights, been behind me for miles." He looked and then said, "There's no truck." I whipped around. Empty road. My blood froze. "This road's strange," he said. "I got detoured too, but there's no construction on 12. Follow me back." I did, eyes glued to the mirrors. No truck. 10 minutes later, we were back on Route 12. No signs, no cones, like nothing was ever there. I thanked him, and he said he'd call the cops. At home, I locked up and couldn't sleep. The next day, the sheriff said no road work was planned. Online, I found people talking about fake detours, strange cars, roads that led nowhere. Some said it was a prank, others hinted at worse. I don't know what I saw. Maybe I was tired, maybe not. But something was wrong with that road. I take a different way home now, even if longer. And every time I see a construction sign, my heart jumps. I don't think I'll ever feel safe driving alone at night again. When I was 15, I met my now husband, who had just turned 16, in art class. Our small town didn't have much for two teens to do, except maybe a trip to Target. The charm here was in the old mining history and the river running through the canyon. I'd grown up on its trails. One short half-mile hike led to a small bridge with a peaceful view. Nearby was another bridge, one of the tallest in the world, beautiful but with a tragic history of suicides. One evening around 6 p.m., we walked to the smaller bridge. The canyon walls blocked the sun early, and darkness came fast. The air felt heavier than usual. By the time we reached the turn toward the bridge, it was pitch black. We used our phone flashlights, but they only lit a small circle. I felt uneasy, but my husband wanted to keep going. As we neared the bridge, I froze. A tall figure stood 3 feet off the trail. My light hit his back. He was huge, 6 or 7 feet tall, bulky, 200 to 250 pounds, in a brown flannel shirt and dark pants. His hair stuck straight up, and his arms were oddly long. His head was round, almost perfectly so. I couldn't see his feet. He stood still, facing the darkness. I whispered, "What is that?" My husband stared, frozen. For a minute, none of us moved. My mind raced. How did he get here? No other cars were parked. My husband called out, "Hey man, what are you doing?" The figure turned slowly. A wave of nausea hit me. I grabbed my husband's arm and ran. I didn't look back. He called my name, running behind me. We reached the car, alone in the lot.